Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. In today's episode, I'm joined once again by Mike Maybin, one of the UK's leading voices on modern vehicle rescue and alternative fuel vehicle response. Mike's co-founder of International Road Rescue and Trauma Consultancy Limited, better known as IRRTC, which are a specialist training provider delivering world-class education in vehicle extrication, rescue operations, and trauma care to emergency services and rescue organisations across the UK and internationally. He's also Institute of Motor Industry Tech Safe registered with extensive expertise in electric and hybrid vehicle hazards. When Mike and I last spoke, it was back in 2024, and many services were still asking the question whether they were ready for electric vehicles. Well, that question realistically is still here. The vehicles are here as well, the incidents are happening, and the need for robust, evidence-based training has really never been greater. So in our conversation today, we explore how the rapid evolution of electric vehicles, hybrids, e-bikes, and lithium-ion battery systems are reshaping emergency response. We get into topics around why battery electric vehicle fires behave fundamentally different from conventional vehicle fires. We'll talk about the operational hazards of high-voltage systems and unexpected propulsion. We speak about silent movement, instant torque, and the implications for pedestrian safety. We speak about the release of highly toxic combustion products during thermal runaway. We ask ourselves why assisted self-extrication is often the safest option for casualties, and also the growing risk posed to e-bikes, scooters, and DIY battery conversions. This is all about how training needs to evolve to keep pace with modern vehicle technology. For example, recent research from the US EPA, UL, FSRI, and NIOSH found that smoke from EV fires contained higher concentrations of metals such as nickel, manganese, cobalt, and lithium, as well as the elevated fluoride compounds, with several samples demonstrating greater mutagenic potential than smoke from conventional internal combustion engine vehicle fires. We also discussed the specialist Level 2 in electric hybrid vehicle hazard management for emergency and recovery personnel, which equips responders with practical knowledge around hazard identification, isolation procedures, and safe operational tactics. This is exactly what you need. Keep your finger on the pulse of this growing hazard in the UK Fire and Rescue Service. This episode's a real clear reminder that these are no longer emerging risks. They are current operational realities. And honestly, if your service is still relying on outdated assumptions, then your training needs to catch up. I'll see you on the other side. We last spoke in 2024, which seems like a short period of time away, but in the grand scheme of things, change has almost been the only constant in our sector. And back then, we were having conversations about new technologies, EVs, hybrids. We're not ready for this. We're not ready for that. And that excuse in one frame has now expired, because there's been so much doctrine, there's been a lot of stuff that you guys have contributed to around the sector. But this is a very dynamic situation, isn't it? Things have continued to change and evolve, and the course that you and your colleagues are participating and teaching on today has changed as well. So what's changed in the last 2024 since 2024 from your perspective, and the things that have not yet penetrated the second or third wave of education in our sector with this?
The vehicles and technologies have massively changed.
Okay.
And they continue to change. But for emergency services, many still haven't got procedures, policies, SOPs, which again. How many fire services have we got? 48 in England?
40, I think it's 47. And then there's Scotland, so they went from 8 to 1. I think it's like 46, 47 now, yeah.
So there's pockets of really good practice around the country that we've seen. I can mention the course in a minute that we're on here. Obviously, link it back to what we do with RTCI and that kind of stuff. So there's pockets of good practice around the country where some services are leading in their part of the world. Others seem to be just making it up as they go along with courtesy.
Why are they doing that, though? Because that can't be ignorance anymore. Because everybody knows about this threat. Is it a capacity thing? Is it a lack of working cross-organisational? Why are they not there?
I don't know. The example I'll use is we did an RTCI course last week. 5 different services on it, but all work differently. So when you start to delve into some of the detail, when you go through the course, you see the conversations happening, as is always the case. Oh, we do this, and oh, we've never thought about doing that, and we use this, and you get that all the time. So there's that going to be going on. But big public sector services just can't change quickly. So it takes time to implement policy, doctrine, protocol. Doesn't happen overnight. I think services are still on that journey of what do they need to know to operationally respond. And it's still early days for the vehicles. Sort of Martin Lown and his team that forensically investigate them, they see what they see and determine the cause of origin and so on. But EVs don't just burst into flames on the roads. I mean, e-bikes and scooters and portable devices might do that, but these vehicles with better quality batteries and battery management systems tend not to do that. There are other risks that are there that are sometimes more subtle, but you don't know until you face that incident.
So if we take that first, we can go into the scooters, the smaller devices, the entrepreneurs who have come up with some wild and wonderful innovations in the EV or lithium ion world. But let's talk about vehicles, because these are the things that are probably most heavily adopted. They're on all of our roads, they're in our car parks, they're on our ferry crossings, all of this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
What are some of the boogeyman myths that you're still hearing that crop up when they say, well, an EV will do this, or you can't do that with an EV? What are the myth-busting stuff? Because I've been lucky enough to sit in, it was a number of years ago now, but sit with a number of your trainers, and obviously we've had discussions with Martin. I love the myth-busting bits.
Yeah.
Because often they just come from folklore and fifth-hand. Were you there? No, you weren't there. So it was like, where's this myth come from?
You're always going to get that, and platforms like social media give you the stage to sort of spread those, and then people will read and see what they interpret on a screen, and it'll inform their decision making and their thoughts, and so that's always going to be there. But that's why the courses exist, which are evidence-based, to clear up that myth, but give you some definitive detail and structures to follow, which are important because you would want your emergency services to respond in the best way possible to get the best outcome possible. And you kind of need protocol, really. That's one example, cascaded widely. Many have copied it, but that's the original.
William Wood Watches are back supporting the podcast, and honestly, it means a lot to me because this brand is built on real service heritage. Whether it's the melting down of the original 1920s British brass firefighter helmets, and they also use upcycled fire hose on all of their straps. It's not just design, it's about the job, and it's built into every single component. I've been wearing them for 10 years now. Found them back in 2015, actually, and they've genuinely been a part of my daily kit ever since. I've got 2. I've got the Valiant and I've got the Chivalrous as well in midnight blue. But the thing about the brand, about William Wood Watches, it stands so different because of its story. Take, for example, their Dunkirk watch. That's not just a timepiece. It's actually built to honour the Massey Shore fireboat. I'll be honest though, the one I've got my eye on this year is the Fearless. It's more of like a field watch on the station, on the watch. It's a smaller 39mm case, compact, rugged, just feels right for the job. So you can actually get 10% off a William Wood Watch by using code FFPodcast. If you want to be part of the history and you want to wear it on your wrist, jump in the notes, check out William Wood Watches. Let's get back to the show. Oh, I've seen that stolen and some AI done on it, and I'm like,
you're always going to.
I know, I've seen that before. That's Mike's team doing that. Like, where's the reference here? And they go, oh no, it was just on Google.
Not my team, but
you contributed
like
to it, didn't you?
Not really. The people that developed this was an international group, sort of forensic background, operational personnel, international, but driven mainly in the UK by Martin Lown and Richard Dunbar. They're the main people behind this.
Well, there you go. I'm misattributing it to you when I have conversations. I apologise.
No,
Sorry,
you no, you're fine. You're fine. So, but yeah, it is copied and mimicked quite a bit, which is a good thing. But if it is it real world usable still? That's the thing. And that's why for this kind of training, this protocol, IAIM, it's at the center of everything with these vehicles and these risks, really. Yeah.
So we've just been, I said to you before we started, just finished a conversation with another colleague on one of the origins of the 10-second triage. And those things that I was speaking about with Phil Calburn very much for me relate over in theory to some of this, because they can get stuck up in medical jargon, but it's not deployable and usable. We could get stuck in chemical reactions of internal batteries and why they do or don't spontaneously burst into flames, but that's not very deployable and tactical on the incident. So when people say to you, well, Mike, these things can just burst into flames, well, that's not true. There's a few reasons that they may or may not become involved in that. Let's cycle back to fundamentals. What are some of the core reasons that the emergency services may be responding to what's happened?
The history of the incident is probably the key thing, that information gathering. In this particular course, and when we deliver our one-day awareness on it, and I try and build it into the RTC element as well, because there's got to be an important element of these alternative fuel vehicles in that course. We attribute it to a type of abuse, and Martin would have mentioned this on his session, either by way of incorrect charging, wrong equipment, wrong charging lead, abuse of charging, too much ultra fast charging, that kind of stuff. Impact damage, accident damage is another cause of it. Extremes of temperature, too cold, too hot. They're the common causes, or some kind of fault developing within the battery or a components or the HV architecture that isn't obvious. I mean, a type of abuse. So it's usually, but what's key is the way human beings interact with these vehicles. That's a common cause of when things go wrong too.
So when we think about our interactions with them, when we think about the type of mechanical damage, or what bits of those are actually dangerous to us? Because a lot of that's outside our sphere of control. So what's hazards that perhaps that get overhyped, and what's actually genuinely dangerous that we need to adopt? Like that guidance that you showed us recently, or just previously, sorry. What's generally dangerous to actual first responders and members of the public?
If we were to take the EV or the hybrid, you couldn't be, from your approach to it, the key thing is to identify that it is an EV or a hybrid. And then it's assessing the scene and the damage. Then there's a risk of unexpected propulsion. And there is some, and the Department for Transport are looking at this at the moment, Pete. It was reported sort of towards the end of last year that for the percentage of hybrid vehicles on the road, there's quite an alarming death rate hitting pedestrians. And they're attributing this to the fact that they're silent running. They can suddenly move forward, backwards. They're quite complicated for drivers that now own them. They're really complicated vehicles. And if you've got somebody older that's bought a brand new vehicle and it's quite a technical bit of kit.
I went to a wealthier older lady recently who was visiting the pharmacy, and she shot her vehicle forwards into the pharmacy window as she was trying to park at the pharmacy. And there was obviously mother and child and families coming in and out of this pharmacy. Luckily, it didn't hit anybody, but punched right through the front wall into an administrative office. And someone was sat at a desk that just got shunted out of the way. I remember seeing another video, it might have been on one of your courses actually, a firefighter in America, and the vehicle shoots forward and crushes him. I think he's trying to lean into the vehicle at the time. So those ones. So I want to stay on the fundamentals before we get. So let's take that hazard as an example. How do we avoid that?
Just approach it from the right direction, which isn't front or back, 45 degrees. So this isn't new intel any longer. We've been educated about this at IRRTC as part of our TCI for a while. It's one of the first elements on the IAIM protocol is to identify and assess. But that unexpected propulsion, some of the trends and data now that the DFT are looking at relating to hybrid vehicles particularly, there is a real risk factor, and the statistics are, and there's quite a few papers out there on this. London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, for instance, have done a paper on this. In urban areas, 3 times more likely um, to sort of potentially be hit by an EV or a hybrid, consequently causing serious injury or, in some instances, death. Much lesser a risk in an urban environment. So these trends now are starting to present themselves that didn't exist 2 years ago. And it makes you wonder what other trends will start to present as we move down the line, as the vehicles age and there's more of them on the road, so on and so forth.
How do we, I know some of this is real basics, but I want to go from core principles and then we'll progress up through complexity. How do I know if it's an electric vehicle? I know there's a number of apps out there, but I don't want to make assumptions of the listener. So how do people know if they're approaching an electric vehicle, unless it has an obvious, Tesla badge on the back of it?
Yeah, well, exactly. Make, model, year, and never assume. So badging, external features, lack of exhaust pipe. Don't assume that the green flash on the number plates is
what does that mean? Because that doesn't mean EV.
Well, as we know, it's a non-permissible feature that the DVLA use for zero emission vehicles only. So 100% zero emission vehicles, zero, electric. That's the only vehicle that's going to have a green flash on it. If it's a hybrid,
I don't think all first responders do know that.
Well,
we make assumptions.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
They may not. They may not.
I think they all. I think some still think that means EV.
Yeah.
I think public still think that means EV.
But yeah, it's you'll only get it on a full EV. You won't get it on a hybrid. It's got to be a zero emissions vehicle, but it's not a legislative requirement. It's a permissible feature that the DVLA use.
Why don't they mandate that legislatively now?
Well, countries like Norway and states in Australia have, where sort of, for instance, France will have a blue flash on the number plate. It's a hydrogen vehicle. Hydrogen is a big fuel source over there for them. So other countries have, but this is one of the big risks that we always talk about. Again, the non-standardization in the UK, because
It's supposed to be a modern, standardized first world country.
Yeah, well,
we don't do things like that. That blows my mind, mate.
Well, there's we don't live in a perfect world, but as a colleague of mine says, everything's got an onion layer to it, and when you start peeling the layers back, you find the vulnerabilities.
That approach thing is an important one, I think, to continue to reinforce, because historically, we used to say, "Oh, we're worried about C-spine injury, so approach from the front, hold your hand up, casualty, keep looking forwards, blah blah blah." Well, you don't want to do that in this situation. So they can overcome small wedges, can't they? So when people are thinking about, I know we're going really, really fundamental, so we'll get away from this in a minute, but wedging wheels, people will usually do opposite corners and stuff like that, singular wedge, just to stop the vehicle moving gently. But if they've not done the Faraday pouch and took away the proximity key and all this jazz,
all of that,
do you have any? Is there any sort of prescribed addition around how much we should be wedging and isolating these vehicles if we recognize it to be an electric vehicle? Because they can overcome. The proportion of them is massive.
Because of the torque. So if it's a dual motor, it's got that 4-wheel drive. If it's a single motor, it's maybe only got sort of one of the drive axles, but it has got that launch and torque capability, as you will have seen in the example mentioned of a senior lady crashing through a shop.
Because there was large concrete block at the front of the parking space that she went straight over.
It just literally ramps over it.
They're so powerful.
They really are. They really are. Because it's that instant drive and torque. But that's one of the big risks. So, make, model, year of vehicle, design of vehicle, they're quite low aerodynamic. So, you need quite an aggressive angle chock, as we always advocate, both sides of the wheel, front and back, just to mitigate against any unexpected movements.
So you've done a great deal more work becoming qualified training in EV and hybrids. People are becoming more and more familiar with EV. I do want to talk about gas clouds and the type of gases that are being posed to people in these incidents. But hybrids, I think, is a very, very flexible term. that I'd love us to explore, because you just alluded to different countries and different fuel sources. Are
Yeah.
we seeing the growth of other fuel sources? We've seen, in my put finger on the pulse feeling, we've seen less sort of less alternative fuels in terms of hybrids that had been retrofitted with different tanks and stuff in the back of them. What's the data telling us, though? Because that might just be a localism for me.
Well, that's one of the key fundamentals about this course that I'd like to give mention to today, which extends on from our one-day awareness, and it's an extension, as I see it, of our RTCI. This
Okay.
level 2 award in EV and hybrid hazards management. It goes into all of these fundamentals so people understand emergency service personnel, police, ambulance, recovery, that kind of organization. So they understand the risks associated with that vehicle. And you can, here at the Academy, there's a whole plethora of vehicles and resources you can interact with and start to build up a picture and gain that knowledge, really. Because they are varied across the manufacturers. And
When you look at the variations across different sort of designs, different brands, different makes and models of these vehicles, have they started to bring themselves more into line now? Even if we're talking about isolation points, or we're talking about
no,
they're still
no,
not
no,
okay.
because again,
Why don't we mandate that? Because it's so,
yeah,
the variation just encourages human error and
yeah,
increases the danger, doesn't it?
yeah, it does. And the big issue is they're not legislated to do it. So because they're not legislated to do it, they won't do it. So that's the big problem that we've got. Sort of that non-standardization, which contributes to these risks, and it comes back to situation, circumstance, environment, severity. But that's why we need that protocol, so it gives us a meaningful, logical control measure to follow, if you like. So we're not exposing ourselves to risks, or we're certainly lessening them to some degree.
So talk us through the variation of hybrids that we would be expected to interact with on the roads. I want to get into the scooters and stuff in a bit, but I want to stay on this main vein of vehicles. MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture, and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. It's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake.
Well, you're going to have the older type hybrid, the 48 volt mild hybrid, combustion engine, small battery. That's obviously moved on now to the hybrid electric vehicle, slightly bigger battery, more energy, still a combustion engine, works from both sources. Then you go to step up a little bit more to the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, the FEV. It's where we are. When you look at the Society and Motor Manufacturer trends and data, if we were to look at January 2026, you will see there's a massive upsell in plug-in hybrid electric vehicle sales.
Really?
Obviously, members of the massive. So you'll see petrol and diesel going down, but you see plug-in hybrid sales going up because people obviously feel that that's what that's going to work
Well,
for
they
them.
had the 2030 rule in place, didn't they? They've kicked that back now, haven't they? Around the sale of.
I'm not sure how achievable that's going to be in 4 years' time. So clearly, things may slide. And now we've got a war in Iran. There's other things going on.
Are we still training for? Well, it's a pivoted question, really. Are we still training for the risks of yesterday. Do you think organizations feel like, well, we've done familiarization on EVs now, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
kind of
definitely,
that
definitely.
box ticked?
Yeah,
But it's very much a moving target, isn't it?
yeah. Awareness 3-4 years ago was important, but it's moved on from awareness now to what would you do in the dynamic phase of an incident, an operational incident. So it's the tactics, is where it's all at now,
Mhm.
um, if you like. But still, incidents of these vehicles are still quite low in number, but
Okay.
likely to expect them to increase over time.
Mhm.
With more of them on the road and so on and so forth.
So,
But
what changes have you done in the training of this that you feel have made a real difference on the incident ground? Because a lot of the people that you train is first responders, isn't it?
the key is it's looking at all the work that Tim Nutbeam has done on the exit, and where impact post collision
Hmm.
methodologies have gone, and trying to focus this on if one of these vehicles are involved and there's a person trapped, that self extrication, assisted extrication is probably the right thing to do to bring if there's a risk the vehicle could become angry, to bring fundamentally the patient out, but also the responders and the rescues out the risk area.
Mm.
Um, so that's been a really key important change, and that's particularly appropriate for EVs. The assisted
How much are
self
you still
extrication.
fighting against concerns of spinal in that argument of encouraging? I mean, the exit
Um,
project's what, 17 years? It's bloody old now,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
still
yeah.
unknown to a lot of responders.
It is, and there's still people that aren't aware of it or don't understand the fundamentals of it, and that's why I would encourage them to go and look at impactpostcollision.com. And when you look at the outputs on one of the tabs, you will see that there's loads of information there for any organization to sort of come up to speed and knowledge on, to learn about really where things have moved to. And
Mm.
Tim and the team now are pushing this towards sort of recovery personnel and AA and RAC at an incident, at an
Mm.
RTC. They're starting to push the methodology to those kind of organizations now. So it's really moving on.
We need to have Tim on again. We had him on years ago,
Yeah,
and I still face people at conferences and stuff like that when I'll reference the exit project, and they do the head tilt. "Oh, I'm not familiar." I'm like, how are you not
yeah,
familiar with that? It was such a groundbreaking
yeah,
piece of work. I just
yeah,
don't know why it never got the penetration. Because again, I think maybe because it was driven by the medical sector. I wonder if the fire and rescue world have just had less proliferation of it, because it does seem to only come through courses such as yourself, or there's people that have a particular academic passion.
I think there's quite a few people that I think every centre that delivers RTCI, for instance, will deliver something on it. I would say, Pete, I really would. It's all over social media platforms.
Mm.
Like I say, a key thing is now exit has morphed into impact. The Centre for Post Collision Response.
Okay.
And that's much more of an international kind of beast, really. But yeah, you will still find people aren't aware of it, don't know of it, or just unfamiliar. So I
Mm.
still see that quite a bit. But um, we're still seeing services with policies and SOPs years out of date that
Yeah.
really, really need a refresh and an update. Um, you know,
So, for those that are still acting from a casualty centre rescue, but hesitation and not perhaps recognizing the time element related to this vehicle may or may not become angry, what's the dangers that they're perhaps unknowingly putting their responders in by having a slower, in their words, perhaps more controlled and professional approach to
yeah,
a longer extrication? What's the
if
unseen risk that they're not really taken into focus?
Well, you don't know if that vehicle is still in drive, so that needs to be considered as part of the IAM protocol.
Mm.
Identify, assess. You need to then isolate, immobilize, and isolate. So they may not be aware of those kind of risks, but if it's badly damaged, light, medium, heavy damage, sort of that UKRO classification. If it's
Mm.
medium or heavy damage from impact or collision, you have to assume there's a chance this vehicle might might start to react, how is that going to interfere with your medical plan, your physical rescue plan? Someone needs to be monitoring this vehicle and deciding, are responders' actions making it better or worse? It's not easy to do, but because services don't get to train on these vehicles and the way they're constructed, they're really put together differently to what fire services train on station.
Do you run exercises with people
Yeah,
donned in breathing
yeah.
apparatus
We've
to
we've run
extricate?
we've run several. I've done a few with Martin. Sort of three, where Martin brings a lot of resources along, sort of flaming and vapor, sort of visual indicators to create conditions that one of these vehicles might react or sort of present with, just to test the responses of the responders. And we try and advocate vehicle relocation. We try and advocate respiratory protection. If you're going to use cutting tools, bring the casualty out the risk area as soon as possible. Is there the opportunity to put respiratory protection on the patient? Don't put a casualty carrier in the patient. Try and assess and treat from outside the risk area. Treat it as a hot zone, potentially, with the potential to get worse or get better, because it doesn't fit into a neat box.
Do you
So
see
we've done
much of a so when I've run the drills, I see a real hesitation from people because they get stuck in like decision loops around, well, I need to do this and I need to make sure I break the glass with a certain bag, or I need to put tape on the window before I do the thing. And I'm like,
okay.
think about severity. If you risk assess it, like do the old risk assessment in your head,
Yeah,
likelihood and severity. Okay, I'm going to throw some glass on the person instead of catching it in the special bag or using the
yeah,
special tape.
yeah,
Likelihood of severity, is it going to be a large shard of glass that's going to cut their carotid artery? Nope. It's going to smash into very small pieces. They might
yeah,
be annoyed, might get some scratches on their face.
yeah,
But when they breathe in a couple of breaths of that toxic vapor cloud,
yeah,
that's quickly going to be game over for them.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
you're wrestling against 60, 80 years of training in trying to say, yes, you're right, you should, however, not now. But this new risk needs to override not all, but a lot of previous approaches for these unique situations, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I just think the example with these particular vehicles, if involved in collision and it looks like it's medium to heavy damage, you have to assume this this incident could develop. That extrication decision tool that Tim and the team produced, is a snatch rescue indicated? If yes, what's the quickest, most effective route or way you could bring that casualty out of that risk area? It's potentially appropriate to use. We're talking worst case scenario, but that might be what a service faces tomorrow or next week.
Firefighters, police officers, and first responders are now stepping into environments wired with more high voltage than ever before. Everything from electric vehicles to solar panels feeding direct current through compromised structures, overhead power lines, and illicit drugs factories with improvised lethal bypasses. Any single strike in the wrong place in this type of environment can turn things fatal very quickly, and that is exactly why we've partnered with Jafco. You already know who Jafco are. They have been relied upon for decades for sturdy, get-the-job-done equipment, and they are not resting on their laurels. They are evolving to face the challenges first responders are handling today through their insulated tool range. These are purpose-built for the scenarios where contact with hidden electrical hazards isn't just possible, it is increasingly likely. Their insulated tools are engineered for real-world abuse and use, designed to keep firefighters, police officers, and all first responders alive in environments where electrification is outpacing policy, equipment, and training. And you know this. This is the kind of innovation our sector needs and the kind of investment organizations should be stepping up to support if we are serious about protecting first responders from fatal consequences. So a massive thank you to Jafco for backing the podcast and backing the crews on the ground. Go check them out, learn what they're doing, and bring that conversation into your service, because this isn't about the future, it's about right now.
On
but
one of
also
our
the
roads,
time at which you've got
Yeah.
to change tactics between not worst case and worst case. What sort of volume do these vehicles actually give this out at? When we talk about this toxic vapor cloud, the quantity that's created is very, very quick.
Yeah, massive, thousands of liters of
Mm,
vapor, depending on the size of the battery, the cell, the state of charge. If it's a lower state of charge, it may be that it doesn't violently react. It might just off gas. If it's got a higher
mm,
state of charge, more energy in
mm,
it, it might be a much more violent reaction. But
mm,
thousands and thousands of liters of volume of
mm,
vapor. That's one of the biggest risks is if it starts to whistle, pop off gas, which might not be immediately visible to the human eye. Somebody standing back and monitoring all the time is a really key feature. But if
mm.
resources don't allow or permit, that's a hard control measure to put into effect. Um,
So, talk to me about the extinguishing medias. Does anyone claimed to have established an effective way to put these out? What, from all of your research and Martin's and the investigations and the debriefs, what feels like the prevailing most effective direction for
it,
control, suppression, or extinguishment in these incidents?
Well, we I try and stay in tandem with Martin. Martin's the subject matter specialist here, sort of,
Mm,
for the forensic investigation side. But what you're starting to see is with certain other sectors like marine and aviation, is the design of the batteries is rapidly moving to like self-containment.
okay.
Automotive isn't quite there yet, but for marine and aviation, the battery designs are if there's an event within that battery, it's contained within the battery. Because on an aircraft or a vessel, spreading is not an option. So all of the
Mm,
designs are moving towards containing within the battery pack through very clever design and build. Automotive vehicles, not anywhere near that, but they're on that journey to follow the same path, if you like.
mm,
But we've got an awful lot of older vehicles on the road now, like a Model S, which might be a 67 plate. It's 9 years
mm.
old. It hasn't burst into flames, but it's older
Yeah.
and we don't know how it might behave.
Uh-huh.
Um, this is the thing. So again, it doesn't fit into a neat box. But extinguishing media, there isn't any because you've got to get that extinguishing media onto what's actually sort of on fire, the battery cell. But if it's well protected within the vehicle still, and the battery's compartmentalized, you're
Mhm,
not getting anything onto that. But there are organizations thinking about using high pressure misting lances
mm.
as a
A
potential
lot of
option.
them products out there.
Yeah, so
Mm.
there are
Would we argue
service.
they're more a way to control the environment and dissipate the potential fire gas ignition, though, rather than actually an extinguishing media? Or am I stretching outside of my
No,
knowledge there?
I just think that once this thing is on its journey of 60 degrees and past, there isn't anything going to put it out really. It's just going to do its thing until it's lost all of its energy. So all you could do is contain and suppress. But it comes back to the environment, situation, location, and severity. That's the differential.
That's why
Um,
it blows my
you know,
mind that they
you
are
know,
still allowing these vehicles on some, I think most ferries and transport things. I think before you might have mentioned to me that or maybe it was Martin, there's certain
Martin probably.
high-rise car parks
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are
yeah,
not allowing
yeah,
these
yeah,
vehicles in there.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's again, legislation is having to catch up with the technology in the vehicles. It's quite a big void. It's catching up, but the vehicles are developing and moving on again.
mm,
But they are becoming better with more technology and better designs.
mm,
There may come a point where the battery chemistry changes, and this is Martin's world, not mine, where it
mm,
brings that risk down altogether to a much more stable chemistry. Again,
mm.
we're on that journey of that being developed, but again, we've still got a lot of lithium ion out there, all around
And there'll
us,
also be
everywhere.
the
Yeah,
just the life cycle of the ones that were designed and perhaps
yeah,
still are being produced
yeah,
in this historical way, finding their
yeah,
way into other forms of life,
yeah,
i.e.,
yeah,
repurposed
yeah,
in home battery
yeah,
storage units and
yeah,
others. The
yeah.
second-hand market is probably the one that concerns me more.
Yeah. Well, on this course, for instance, here today, there are four FRS service-wide instructors, and there are four collision investigators, all
Okay.
with different needs and different requirements, but learning about what does this mean for their trade.
Hmm.
Now, fortunately, the police guys are all sort of like level 3 EV trained, got automotive backgrounds, understand the components and how to work around them. Not the case for fire, but again, different sectors, different
Yeah,
experiences, and
very much so.
different needs.
Speaking about other organisations and other sectors, I know you've given indication to other areas such as recovery,
Yeah,
such as marine, such as.
yeah,
Well, it looks like we've started now to recognise the need to spread this awareness further, because even once first responders have finished dealing with these incidents, they still do face a
yeah,
tremendous hazard to other organisations
yeah.
that are going to be dealing with this further down the line, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. And again, I'll reference that HSE paper. You know, working around EVs and hybrid vehicles. Again, recovery, emergency services, valeters.
Hmm.
They are the four. They are four listed groups. So absolutely. But that's obviously due an update as well at some point soon. Now, recovery, lots of wonderful recovery operators out there, but the one I'm associated with is John Beach Recovery.
Okay.
And John
What's
has
their approach?
they've got a containment unit and an electric vehicle recovery unit, and they're already looking at other um, sort of other versions for what they see coming down the line.
Hmm.
So huge transition to fleet vehicles becoming electric, delivery vehicles, utility vehicles. That model works for them. Vehicle goes out all day, does its thing, comes back, charges overnight. But the drivers that drive them maybe might not drive them very carefully. They might be involved in incidents. So there's
My
potential
words, not
there.
yours. There's a lot of
Yeah.
Amazon electric trucks when I was in America,
There's an
and they'll
awful
be
lot.
here very soon, if
Well,
they're not already. I bet they're here.
Amazon made a pledge in this country sort of last year. They want all of their electric Mercedes-Benz delivery fleet to be full electric.
Awesome.
10,000 of them. So yeah, that's the pledge they've
Thanks.
made. But
And I
that
bet that capitalist motor is not going to slow down due to our concerns.
no, but that model works for them for that sort of going out delivery, come back. That
Yeah.
electric charge up in the depot overnight, go back out again. That works for them, and they've got the infrastructure
Yeah.
there to
It's a lot
run
more
that
cost effective for them.
a lot
Yeah.
more. And
Lots
that
of
model
short journey drop offs up and down streets,
and that
10
and that,
mile radius, whatever.
so for fleet, that really works for them.
Mm.
And it's rapidly transitioning. That's where the biggest uptake is fleet. So for John,
How much, sorry, awareness and or interaction have you been able to have with some of the lorries that are out there?
uh, there are more and more appearing. Still a lot of
Mm.
LNG, CNG on the road, but there are full electric out there. And again,
I
Amazon
know.
have got a pledge. So West Yorkshire, there's a big depot in West Yorkshire.
I went to it. Yeah, where they
Yeah,
charge them overnight. It's
yeah, yeah, yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So
Because I asked them
so
about what
yeah,
their fire
yeah,
prevention was there. I said,
yeah,
so they said, oh, it's full CCTV,
yeah,
but they have people sleeping in the lorries overnight whilst they charge.
yeah. I know.
Because
It's
that's what you do in a
it's
lorry. You
yeah,
sleep in
of
it
course,
overnight. But I
of
was like,
course.
so what's your suppression method for this? So you know you've got CCTV watching it. Does that CCTV have thermal? They said no. But they've got call points. They've got
Yeah, yeah,
cool, but then they're worried about vandalism and people.
yeah,
So I was like, I'm not sure who's ticked that one off. I'm not
yeah.
sure we're there with that. Because when
That's
one of them starts running away from itself,
it's another one of those real world plan and reality sort of situations.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. And there's
Because
going to be
God knows how
yeah,
much gas they're going to kick out.
yeah.
Whoa.
But again, it's sort of it's still early days for those kind of vehicles. I'm not aware of any incidents, HGV incidents, where a full electric's been involved. Yes, there may well be some. I'm not aware of any, but it
They'll be
may come
coming.
in time. It may come in time.
And that's not because they're badly designed. It's because
No,
people have crashes.
yeah, of course.
And, you can't get over that, mechanical damage. And once that happens and something penetrates, they don't move slow and it's
that
heavy.
that risk is there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's still early days.
Mhm.
So over time, it's trying to predict what kind of incidents or trends you may start to see. That's why it's quite interesting when you look at these hybrid trends and the risk of hitting pedestrians in urban environments. It's quite interesting when you start delving into that and realizing this probably wasn't considered 12 months ago, but we've got the data now showing that it's a concern. Yeah.
Quick pause, because I want to tell you about a new partnership we have with First Tactical. First Tactical builds equipment for people who work when environments are seriously unforgiving. And if you go to their website, you'll find kit is designed specifically for us, for firefighters, for police officers, technical rescue teams, fire investigation, hazmat, hazardous materials teams, urban search and rescue. This is honestly the equipment that you really want to rely on. It's built for real operations, real pressure, long ass days, and I genuinely use this stuff. Here's a few of my favorites. They've got their men's Defender short sleeve. I've got that in black. It's got a huge load of specialized pockets, space for all of our gears, the pads, the pens, all of the stuff. It's got them on the sleeves on both sides. Also got the Defender pants. These have got 28 pockets in total on them. It's mad. Let's be honest, we absolutely love the bags. I use their 25-litre specialist half-day backpack. The shoulder straps as well are strong AF. Like I say, this isn't lifestyle gear. It's built for real world, real operations. We talk about the realities of the job, and First Tactical is just the ideal partnership for us. So go take a look, firsttactical.co.uk. Now back to the show. Take me back to John for a second and the recovery company. So what is it they're actually doing, and how heavily adopted nationwide is this approach?
John runs, he's got an electric vehicle recovery unit. So that's hook and eye lift, high ab sort of crane feature too. So he can take that vehicle to the scene of operations and either hook and eye it off, or he can use the high ab and lift the vehicle in, keeping people away from sort of the vehicle, if you like. But within that, it's also got a winch within it too. But it uses sprinkler system on the chassis misting, side sprinkler misting, which if the vehicle goes into a fire state, those systems can be activated, and a bit like fire behavior training, misting sprays proven to be very effective.
Thermal monitoring in there. Is there with the vehicle, or is it okay?
Yeah, so he could have a system where it's automatic. The version John runs, keep it simple, smart. It's all manual, but he's got now 5 or 6 memorandums of understanding with different fire services where they call him to the incident, the domestic property, the roadside, and the recovery unit will go out, recover the vehicle, take it back, and then he'll store it at his yard, sort of within a bonded area, if you like, where it's there for insurance. And that's all insurance cost, no cost to emergency services.
Yeah, you handle that over as part of the recovery that goes to the insurer.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like as many as I'd like it to be, though, as in 5, given how many services there are. Is there much conversation around making this more nationwide?
They're coming on slowly. I'm 5 or 6. It might even be 7 now that he has. But in different parts of the world, different parts of the country, I should say, different recovery operators will be probably developing their own little models of. But it's an insurance company stipulation that if you're going to recover this vehicle, you've got to have the ability to store it safely, or otherwise you're not insured.
So what's the method of penetration for him? Like, is it that local organizations need to approach them? Is it local fire services need to have a memorandum of understanding with them? Is it the insurers? How do we get more people doing that if there's...
So there's a memorandum of understanding with the fire and rescue service that if crews are aware of the containment unit being available or the recovery unit being, they can request its attendance at an incident to take the risk away. And recently, he's been to quite a few hybrids on charge on a drive that have decided to become angry.
Where's he based?
He's based in Stoke. So
Stoke.
Longton.
So if there's anybody within that regional radius there, this is new information to them.
He goes into Staffordshire Fire and Rescue Service response area, West Mids, Hereford and Worcester, Shropshire. He goes into.
But there's still a number of organisations around there. I can think of Nottinghamshire, Warwickshire, Leicestershire.
That
that
Yeah,
I'm astonished haven't. I say it only because I know it's something we've perhaps spoken about before, but I would
yeah,
love to create a bit more of a ground level, station level demand to force
yeah,
this up, because I'm
yeah,
sure people at strategic level are already aware of it, and they've just
yeah,
politely maybe said no. Um, but I think if we create a bit more of a ground demand for the actual incident commanders who are facing these things, they would probably
yeah,
quite prefer to be able to mobilize a resource like this.
yeah, yeah. It
Um,
is.
what's the company called if people want to reach out to it? Sorry, as a
Uh,
segue.
John Beach Recovery,
John Beach Recovery.
and they
Okay.
use the electric vehicle recovery unit, which is a fire containers product.
Yeah.
So it's so yeah, but John's already looking at now a slightly bigger version because commercial vans,
Mm.
the Maybin he's recovered a couple of vehicles that have been, multi drop off. I won't name the companies
Hmm.
that have got themselves in trouble, and there's that risk that is it already damaged, or when I recover it, could I make it angry, or when I offload it at the yard, could it get angry?
Yeah.
He's gained
And
a
if it
lot of
does get
yeah
angry, I don't have an ability to stop it. And what's the potential
yeah
ramifications of that?
yeah,
Because
and
people have
that's
seen lots of videos about the
oh
fire
yeah
spread and the
yeah,
jet that comes out from different angles of these things.
and
It's
and, and that's
yeah.
why he's got to have an area where it's contained should that happen as an
Mm,
insurance requirement, and he
mm,
has, but not all recovery operators have.
mm.
But it's an insurance stipulation that they should have if they're going to recover. So many won't recover because they haven't got those features or capability.
Yeah.
So
Crazy.
so yeah, um,
What let's take a hard left into the other variations of technologies that these things have been utilized in. So we're
yeah,
seeing a lot more motorbikes, we're seeing a lot more scooters,
yeah,
we're seeing a lot more smaller vehicles adopting this,
yeah.
which means they're penetrating into much wider areas of society other than those that solely own vehicles.
Yeah.
Um, what other things you feel we're not giving great enough attention to in terms of those sort of off spurts of technology? It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
I try and look at this occasionally if I can. I try and keep
Mm.
up to date with the incidents and the trends. But by far, the biggest concern with these types of vehicles is e-bikes and scooters. Really, as we know, poorer quality batteries, doesn't have a battery management system like an electric car would have. More susceptible to being overcharged, more susceptible to being damaged, more
Mm-hmm.
susceptible to using the wrong charger to charge it up,
Mm-hmm.
and one
Mm-hmm.
day it sort of kills you in your own house. That's what
Yeah.
There's plenty of that going on in the UK, and
Mm-hmm.
coroners are now interestingly starting to record cause of death e-bike conversion.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's quite a few. There's quite a few examples on there now where a coroner has written a regulation 28 preventing future deaths report because someone's got this e-bike conversion, charged it up at home, bought a kit online, fitted it themselves, charged it up at night, to become angry, died from exposure to the vapors. So
So where do those reports go in terms of being a catalyst for change? What's that?
um,
What's that supposed to aid? Obviously,
well,
it's important for the
yeah,
victim and for
yeah,
life insurance
yeah,
and all that jazz. But
yeah. There aren't that many yet. I think I've found about 5 or 6 of these
okay,
regulation 28s, and
are they
mainly
publicly accessible documents?
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The most common one you'll find is from an incident in Yorkshire in 2023, Bradford, where the coroner ruled that because of an e-bike kit being bought, fitted, don't know the history of the sort of all the quality of the workmanship of the battery. The owner of the bike fitted it himself, but yeah, it caused his demise, unfortunately. That's where the biggest
was
risk
that in
is.
his home or in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
apartment
yeah,
block or?
yeah. No, in his home. So of course, then you've got to think that fire go out to that, building fire, primary building fire, and not aware that this is the catalyst for it. But obviously, that's what they're seeing an awful lot of in London. When you look at the incident graphs in London, and there's a great incident graph where it shows you as the years go on, the projected and confirmed incidents are just going up and up and up. To be
Jonathan
expected.
Smith,
To be
Commissioner of
expected.
London, brought
Yeah,
that up
yeah,
as one of the
yeah,
specific areas of
yeah,
concern
yeah,
in the heavily densely populated
yeah,
areas where obviously
yeah.
you can't park your cars. There is
No,
just seeing a large adoption of this technology,
yeah,
and
yeah,
LFB just really wrestling with it. Really wrestling
yeah,
with it.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You've done a lot of training in this last year with getting yourself on the professional registry for the Institute of Motor Industry.
yeah.
I have never had any conversations with them. What sort of insights have you taken away from that? And who is the Institute of Motor Industry? Who does that mean actually working with? Who's on this registry?
It's a professional body, really. It's formed in 1920, and it's an automotive body. But it's what the industry uses as a professional standard, if you like.
Okay.
So, this course that I'm assisting Martin with, for instance, this week, it's run at probably the leading centre in the UK for the IMI,
Uh-huh.
and what that means is for people that come on the course, just for awareness, if they do the course and they complete the course, they get membership of an organisation called TechSafe, which is a bit like Corgi and or Gas Safe, if you like. You meet a standard, you've trained to a standard, so you go onto this register, and it's just good for sort of credibility standards. And I think it's particularly relevant for fire and rescue service instructors. They've got to get an accredited qualification, SFJ, for their RTCI. That's really important. But we haven't got the time to deliver a great depth of knowledge during that course.
No.
So we either offer our 1 day awareness, which can only delve so deep, or I try and signpost them to the level 2 award in the EV hybrid hazard management, which gives them this underpinning practical 3 day, doesn't exist anywhere else, a 3 day qualification, and that IMI standard, which then it just gives them what they need in their own organizations to improve their own learning materials or to develop their own SOPs and policies, really. So it's
Blows
super
my
important.
mind there's not
Um,
more things doing it, because every organization is aware of this hazard and how much we don't have an
yeah,
answer for it.
yeah.
Yet, from my perspective, it feels like you guys and girls are kind of the only people, I think, that are taking a real focus on this and going,
Well,
we need to do more awareness on this.
well,
And that we're going to
I
specifically
yeah.
dedicate these level 2 courses to it, because no one else seems to be doing it.
Well, that's a collaboration between Firewise UK and ProTech Academy, and I'll give you all this information for the
Yes, we'll put in
podcast
the
notes
links.
links at the bottom, so they can go and have a look at that. So it's a collaboration between the two. So you've got the technical expertise of the master technicians here, the two owners, Amy and Lee. They've got DVSA backgrounds, but they are super passionate about standards. So with Martin's experience, knowledge, and expertise too, you're going to really struggle to get any better
But I
training
know
on
it's
this
a
subject
collaboration
matter.
piece, but what I mean
Yeah,
is people
yeah,
can take an RTCI course in lots of places around the UK, but
yeah.
you guys as a collaborative seem to be the only ones going that next level into what is a very known and exploding hazard.
Yeah, just because there's a real world benefit to it, and
Yeah.
we're super passionate about trying to provide value for money, but give people the knowledge to go away and develop their own protocols. The events happened, but the way you react to it is key to getting the best outcome. That's probably at the
Yeah.
center of it, really.
So we've spoken about loads of elements of like local best practice and people that have maybe capacity, desire, interest, and availability to send people on these courses. But if we zoom right out to look at it from a national level, what are the things that people should be aware of and the obligations that we have to our responders and our teams and our staff?
Well, you've got you got emergency services now responding to vehicles that are really technically different to how they would have been yesteryear, and some of these vehicles have got, they pose the kind of risks and hazards we've mentioned. But if they're accident damaged, crash damaged, and we've got components and cables exposed from energy transfer and deformation, some of these vehicles may not have, activated the shutdown systems they've got to channel all the energy into the battery. So there
Mhm.
is a chance that, exposed cables, components could still be live. So when we're talking about vehicles with 600, 700 volts plus, full EVs, the electrical wiring regulations, the electrical regulations 99 sort of kick in. And potentially now we've got responders working around high voltages, those regulations kick in. So it's another control measure that is mentioned in IAM. If the incident, and it comes back to the damage to the vehicle, scene, environment situation, if we have got a highly damaged EV, not only have we got that vapor risk, we've got exposed cables, exposed components, which could still be potentially energized. We don't give our FRS personnel the PPE to deal with that. We don't.
Mm.
They can't test and prove that they're sort of, like you would do on one of the technical courses here. So we have to assume that they're energized until proven otherwise.
Mhm.
So it's another risk where these national occupational standards that exist, where it's about managing these situations at the roadside. It comes back to that knowledge and understanding elements that, clearly written down and defined now that maybe
Mhm.
organizations don't know about or haven't considered. So
Where can they access that information?
um, these are Institute of Motor Industry standards
Mhm.
EV02A, which is for recovery personnel, and EV02B, which is more for the accident damage vehicle, which maybe fire investigation might come into contact with. They're not freely available,
Mhm.
because I've got the draft copies in front of me,
Mhm.
and they're due for sort of review in the next year or two. Um,
Okay.
I'll see if I can find a link to them and put them on the podcast webpage.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of stuff in there that, would bore people as well potentially. So
True.
it's
Well,
but
this is the
it's
thing when I say sometimes we're too impatient to be intelligent because a lot of
yes,
these documents are written for industry, and you
yes,
really have to go through them to
yes,
find the
yes,
needles in the haystack. But
yes.
we
They
can't
are
just
there.
unplug from it and go, "Oh, it's too confusing,"
Yeah,
because
uh,
then we're getting left behind. We
yeah,
need we
because
need to discipline ourselves, and we have
you do.
people in our organizations, operational assurance,
Yeah,
and wherever they
yeah,
work in.
yeah. That's
They'll have
right.
a look
That's
because they
right.
can't. Ignorance can't be an excuse anymore. This stuff's out
No,
there. It's
it is,
everywhere.
mate.
You got to know. Yeah.
So for fire, if RTC incidents involving these vehicles, that extrication competence framework kicks in again.
Mm.
As a framework of standards that services should be working towards. All of those different levels 1 to 4, unless you're level 5, influencing national guidance. Again, it's a document just like that, which details knowledge, understanding, competencies, depending on your level,
Mm.
in your role. But
Working
ma-
towards. Bet
working
that's a very
towards,
widely adopted term.
yeah,
And how we
I know,
justify working towards
towards, it's really
is a
grey.
very flexible statement, isn't it?
It's a really grey one, and this
Well,
is
for
where
those people that desperately want to continue working towards it, there's an absolute buffet because you will send me them or we'll stick them underneath it. There will be an
yeah,
absolute buffet of
yeah,
resources.
yeah. Try to,
Um,
yeah,
People will have a delve in there, and there
yeah,
really is the small. There's the one day. There's the longer courses. There's the
yes,
documentation.
yeah,
Um, I really enjoy delving back into this. I want to keep circling back every sort of 6 to 8 months with a
yeah,
variety of individuals. We've had
yeah.
Paul Christensen on in the past. I've had a
That's
bunch
right.
of people on LinkedIn who are experts or different international subject matter enthusiasts with
Yes,
differing approaches. But I love stretching into those other avenues. And I think you probably do it.
yeah,
Well, you definitely do it a lot better than me because obviously you and your colleagues run it as a professional course. I'm just I'm just a subject matter enthusiast. But yeah, there still seems to be like a nagging underlying feeling that we're slightly behind the curve on a lot of this. And I just hate the thought that it's catching out members of the public, and I fear it catching out members of the first responder sector as well.
Yeah, it's still early days. You know, I keep trying to look at the SMMT data to see how many new vehicle registrations every 3 months I put the information out. But there's still only like sort of 5-6% of these vehicles on the road as new registered vehicles. So still a small proportion, but as we move forward, those percentages will increase. And those vehicles will have
5%'s a lot.
It is a lot. It is a lot, but again, but the biggest proportion of new registrations at the moment are plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. You know, FEVs, because people seem to be more trusting of buying into that than full electric. But industry is going full electric. You know.
It's the direction of travel, brother, and we've got to catch up with it. I want to be respectful of your time. You're in the midst of delivering a course alongside Martin and the rest of the team. I always love having us on, brother. There's loads of people to get onto here. Please ensure you guys and girls have a look underneath this. Click a link or multiple of your own choosing and delve further, because there'll have been 1,000 elements that we'll have only briefly touched on today, which require a lot more study. But send my love to all the team, mate, and I really look forward to catching up with you again in the future. Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.